welcome everybody. My name is Stephan Janssen. For the people who don't know me, I also run a Java conference called Devox in Belgium. I'm also the founder of Devox for Kids. And I've got a new baby, which is called Devox Genie. And it's really what I want to talk a bit about, is that how I'm using Java to do AI-Augmented Programming. And why do I call it AI-Augmented Programming? Because if you take the first letters, it's spelled AAP, which in Dutch is, of course, monkey. And it's basically what Tom mentioned this morning as well, is that we're basically replacing large language models, or large language models are replacing Stack Overflow, right? We're just copy and pasting without thinking. So as a monkey, we just copy and paste it. At least the juniors do this, I would say. I think as a senior developer, looking at the gray hair that I have, I'm probably allowed to say that. I mean, you need to really look at the code that it suggested or suggests. And if you do that and you understand what it gives, you might sometimes see, oh, it's going to the wrong direction. Like, it's trying to say that I should develop my own caching framework. No. Let's guide it to the direction where it should use the cacheable annotation of Spring and go in that direction. And if you do that as a senior developer, because you have that knowledge, you can be really productive. And then it's not ape anymore, it's not monkey anymore, but you are really becoming, I call it like I have a Venkat in the pocket, basically. Right? Because I'm just an average developer. But since I've been using large language models, I am definitely becoming a more productive developer. And that's a bit what I want to talk about. And so, I don't know if you know this, but last month we had Devox Belgium. And the cool thing about organizing this conference, I mean, I'm a developer. I develop every day. Weekend in, weekend out. It's just my passion. It's what I love to do. And the beauty of organizing a conference like Devox and others is that you get a glimpse of what's really living in the community. And this cloud, keyword cloud, is actually from the 900 proposals we got from Devox Belgium this year. And what's very interesting is that this year we had LangChain4j appear, which did not appear the year before. The year before, we had actually one talk on LangChain4j by Liz Raas, where she basically announced this API. Another interesting thing is that generative AI, as you can see, and large language models are really dominant in those 900 proposals. And as a result, we had like 200 talks. I think 20%, 25% were very related on this new hype train. I call it hype. I don't fully agree with hype. It's definitely a train that you have to jump on. Because if you are a senior developer, it can really make your job easier and more interesting. Now, who knows about LangChain4j, just out of interest? I would say 5%, 6%. So if you only remember one thing of this talk, well, maybe two things, but definitely one thing would be, have a look at LangChain4j. It's an open source project. It's basically a Java API to integrate large language models in your project. The code is beautifully written. Dimitro, who's the lead developer, he was actually last year at Devox Belgium, but he's very shy, so he doesn't like to talk in front of audience, so that's why he asked Liz to talk. But he was at the event. And funny enough, that's what I like to call these type of events like JFOL and so on. It's where dots are getting connected. People are getting connected. And the lead, the product manager of Quarkus, which is part of Red Hat, IBM, he was also at Devox, and he saw this talk from Liz Raas on LangChain4j. He was like, wow, this is the way to go. And at that spot, they actually hooked up together, and a couple months later, Dimitro now works full-time for Quarkus team doing LangChain4j. And that's the beauty of these community conferences. Magic does happen on different levels. But this LangChain4j, fully Java, does all sorts of cool things. I mean, it does chat memory, so it actually has a very interesting, very simple API to do chat memory. So where you do a prompt, you get a response, another prompt, a response. It keeps track of that conversation. It has tooling support, so where you want to say like, okay, call a method when you're doing this type of question. It has all that kind of support, and it even does some advanced retrieval augmented generation called RAG. So definitely have a look at that. I actually did, after DevOps last year, I actually did a talk on RAG. And RAG is not to be underestimated. I mean, this was basically my prototype. I've published it on GitHub. You can have a look at it. It's actually more complicated than you would think. It's not just a pure vector similarity search. There's a lot more that comes into play. Like, for example, interesting ways to summarize the conversation so it doesn't get too big. Text splitters. I mean, I developed this 1 year ago. No, I developed it, but what is it? Beginning of this year. But 1 year ago, the reason why we were doing text splitters is that the window context, so the prompt that you send to a model, it had a maximum of 4,000 tokens. Now, a token is around 2 to 3 characters, right? 4,000 tokens was last year. That was the maximum I could send. This, a couple of months ago, the maximum we have now is 2 million tokens. So in 1 year time, from 4,000 to 2 million. So that means 2 million. Do you know how much that is? You know Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, so the 3 books, 3 times 0.2, those books you can put in 1 prompt. I mean, that's a big project, right? And the 2 million, that's supported by Google Gemini. So Google Gemini is really leading the way on that level. Others are more around 2,000 tokens, 200,000 tokens, sorry. 200,000 tokens is a nice project that you can already include in the full prompt. So I don't have to do RAG anymore for certain situations because I can just include the full project. So that's why I stopped talking about RAG. If you do want to still see that talk, here's the link. You can find it on YouTube. I gave it a couple of times. And there are some very interesting, more advanced talks that were given last month as well. This is just a few of them. Just go to the DevOps YouTube channel. There's a really good talk from naive to advanced RAG. So if you want to do RAG, Guillaume Laforge and Cédric Leuven, they gave a really good deep dive, about 3 hours, so 2 hours and 46 minutes on RAG. So anyway, what I want to talk about is AI coding assistance. That's really the focus of this talk, using modern Java. Just out of interest, who's already using an AI code assistant? I would say 40% or 50%. Okay, all right. Now, who is not allowed to use a coding assistant because of privacy? I would say 10%, so it's not too bad. Do keep in mind that if you do use a cloud LLM, they will use your data to feed their data set, to feed their model. Okay? Don't be naive with that. Right? So if you're working on a project which is like for a bank, you have intellectual property, it's really important that you keep that, secure. Do not use a cloud model. Yeah? Unless, of course, it's on-premise. Right? So like ChatGPT, they allow you, or even with Azure, they allow you to do a local on-premise installation, then it's secured. Right? But if you do use a cloud one, they're going to use your data. So watch out for that. And this is where it really becomes important that you're here, is that AI will not replace your job. Whoops. Developers using AI will. I strongly believe that. Right? I'm more productive with AI. I can do things which it took 3 weeks. Like I developed like a stupid WordPress plugin. It would have taken me 3 weeks to do that. I'm not an expert in PHP. I don't know WordPress. I mean, I know it well, but I don't know the API well enough. I was able to make a plugin which would take me 3 weeks in 3 hours, fully working. 3 hours versus 3 weeks. If you're a consultant, that's a huge opportunity. You can bill your customer for 3 weeks, and after 3 hours, you're finished. If it's a WordPress plugin, which often they will probably not externalize. But it's really important that you jump on this train now, as soon as possible. Now, last year, DevOps Belgium, at the opening keynote, I had Anton come on stage to talk about their AI assistant in IntelliJ. Who's using IntelliJ? I would say 90% of the room. Great. And wow, I was really amazed. I was like, beautiful AI. Who's using AI assistant? Ooh, maybe 4%, so not a lot. He demoed it, and I actually took a snapshot of the talk where I said, Anton, is the AI assistant open source? And do you support local models? And it was twice negative. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. I'll give you a couple of months, and then you can hopefully support that. December, nothing. January, nothing. February, nothing. And so I said, okay, you know what? I'll develop it myself. I couldn't wait any longer because I had a need to have a few things. One, I wanted to have a local model, so a local large language model on my Mac. I wanted to have it fully open sourced, not closed sourced. And I wanted to have it completely developed in Java using any model that's out there. So both local and remote. And what it's even better, I wanted to actually have it interact with each other. So I want to have like talk to a local model, get the response from the local model, then give that to a cloud model, say, hey, review what the local one did, and then have the clouds, have multiple cloud ones review each other. That was my use case. And it's actually possible with this plugin. Fully open source, it's completely free. There's no business model behind it. It's basically a tool I needed, and I think others will probably appreciate as well. And it looks like I've hit a sweet spot. I think we almost got 5,000 downloads already, which is great, because I've only developed it for myself. But it looks like other people appreciate it. So let me demonstrate that a bit. And then the idea is I'll talk about the technology behind it so you understand how Java can be used to accomplish this. So I'm in my favorite IDE. And what you do is just, you go to the plugins marketplace and you type in Devox Genie. And that's how you can install it. Now, what you do need to know is that I do not do auto-completion. I hate that. So if you do tap, and it comes with a garbage sentence of these 2 lines and so on, sure, it's helpful, but that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is a real, so you need to know, I work at home alone. I have no colleagues, I have no pair development, so I have no sanity check, I don't have any validation. So I'm using that one, I'm using Devox Genie and the cloud models actually as a pair developer. So what I want to do is that I want to give a piece of code or I want to give the full project and then actually have it validate and brainstorm about it. That's how I use it, right? And so that's what the plugin is focusing on. It's not doing auto-completion, but it does this type of co-assistant. So when you install it, there's this few options. So first of all, you can see all the different models that we support, both local and cloud. And when you select a certain one, like Olama is the one that runs really nice on Mac locally, it's open source and free, you can actually then install different models and it will list the different models. And what's also nice, it shows the context window of these models. So you can see there's actually models there which have 131,000 tokens. 131,000 tokens. So that already, which is really interesting, I can actually use Devox Genie to do development on Devox Genie, right? So I can, this is meta programming basically, right? So I can go here and say, by the way, the best cloud model is Claude 3.5 Sonnet by Anthropic. Yeah. And so what you need to do if you want to use this one is you go first here to the settings, and this is where you can enter if you want to change any of the local ones of the ports that you're using, or you can change it here. But more importantly, I can here add all the keys. I use all of them, right, just to play with and so on. So this is where you add the keys. And then here on the left, you have the settings of the different models and the copy and scan project. So the first one is here, the basic ones. You can just keep it like it is. So it's just the basic temperatures, the maximum tokens, and so on. But where it's really interesting are these two, the prompts. So in the prompt, I just say, you are a Java expert that knows everything about open LLM interfaces for this specific project. And I can actually even create custom prompts. I know one guy at Quarkus, he created a Javadoc prompt, which basically says, hey, create me Javadoc for the class that it's currently open. And he just does /Javadoc, poof, and it creates the Javadoc for you. So if you want to do like a unit test with using a specific framework or whatever, you can just use custom prompts for that. But the more important one is the scan and copy project. Here, you specify which directories you want to exclude. And this is where I copy the full project. So which directories should it exclude? Which file extensions I should include? And maybe even use the git ignore to ignore anything which is in the git ignore. Right? So this is rather important because the plugin works on all the IntelliJ IDEs. So if you have PHP Storm or Webform, what is it, or CLion, it works for all these, how do you call that, products of JetBrains, right? So if you do with CLion in C++, you need to make sure that you include CPP, otherwise those files will not be included when you copy the full project into the prompt, right? And then there's this information about the cost of all the tokens, so it gives you a bit of an idea of how much it will cost if you use a cloud LLM. So the cool thing is here, like for Devox Genie, I can do right-click, and then I can say, calculate the tokens for this directory. So I get a grasp of how big it is. So here it says it's 96,000 tokens on the right there, 96,000 tokens. So I know that's the minimum I need if I want to copy the full project. So what I can do is then here on the bottom right, I can say add full project. And there it has added the full, let me make this a bit bigger. Okay, yeah, there. Now I've added the full project using these filters in the prompt. And then I can say like, how can I improve this project? Well, whatever, right? And now it's using Claude Anthropic, sends the full prompt. Claude Anthropic has 200,000 tokens. Mine is 96, so it fits nicely in that context. And it will now basically go through the whole project. The cool thing is that when I do a copy or add the full project, I can actually copy the full project in my clipboard. And then in my clipboard, I can actually use that to go to the web version of Anthropic. Who's using Anthropic? Jesus, no one? One? Seriously, you have to look at this. I mean, there it is. So here it takes a bit of a while because there's a lot of stuff that's going on, but it's basically giving me these nice first rules of like, okay, should do this, do that, blah, blah, blah. And then I can go deeper and say, well, okay, accessibility, explain, and you're basically having a conversation with the model, right? The other way, because I'm paying now by the API key, right? So you're paying per token. And so here, as you can see, I've used about 138,000 tokens, took 24 seconds, and the cost was 42 cents. I mean, if you pay a senior developer in Belgium, you're going to pay 800 euros a day. Right? I can do a lot of prompting with 800 euros, right? So that's something you need to think about. But the other way is that if you want to do it cheaper, you can go to Anthropic and go to their website here, and there you can create projects. So I have a project here. Well, let's create a new one. Create project, demo. Devox Genie, whatever. Okay. And so in this project, what I can now do is that I can add knowledge to this project. And so here I can say add content, add text content, project. And I just didn't paste because when I added the project, as you remembered in the plugin, it copied the full project also in my clipboard. And here, that's basically the full code of Devoxx Genie, and it even shows, to give a bit of context, what the files are, what the structure is, etc. Right? And I just say add content. So now I have this in the web form. The beauty of this approach is that this cost me $20 a month, and I can just do conversations with it. But what's even better, they have a mobile app, which I can run on my phone, and then I can actually have conversations about my project while I'm sitting on the toilet. Toilet is made, well, no, it does happen. I have some creative moments on the toilet. But let's say that you're on the train or you're on, on travel of like, my son plays basketball, my wife drives, and I'm just chatting with Claude, thinking about new architecture approaches, etc. And I can actually have conversations. So I can again ask here, like, what are the top 10 refactorings I should do for this project? And it doesn't matter if you have typos, it's smart enough to know that project is what I'm meaning. But here it's doing the same thing what Devoxx Genie is doing, but now in the web form. Yeah? So what I normally do, the way I work, is that I first work on the web until I run out of credits, because sometimes they will say, you've talked too much to it, so you've run out of messages, you have to wait another 6 hours. And then I continue in the development environment, because there I'm paying per API key, per tokens. And that's how I actually work. And you have conversations. And again, as a senior developer, and seriously, this one, they've just released a new version a couple of weeks ago. I get goosebumps. This is the worst the model will ever be. They're only getting better. And they're already very smart. Yeah. But sure, they might, I won't say hallucinate, but they might force you in a certain directions that you don't want. And that's where you need to make sure that you guide it, right? But it's basically, giving me nice code, what I should change, etc. And this is like a universal tutor for $20. You need internet access and $20, and you have a universal tutor. I mean, come on. You have to like this, right? It's just nice. So that's quickly Devoxx Genie, and I showed that at the opening keynote last month. There was one attendee who said, trying out Devoxx Genie on my M3 Max, just pulled Llama 3.2, 132,000 tokens. This thing is FK, I don't know what that stands for. This thing is amazing. It just uploaded the whole code base, 85,000 tokens, of one of our services and asked it to create a proper README done in 8 seconds local only. So he even used only a local model. What I didn't show you yet, let me just go back, is that I can actually start locally. Like, let's go, I'm doing this project where I'm migrating Angular 9 to Angular 17 using PrimeNG, which is not the most fun thing to do. So what I can do is, like, I can select code here and then use a local model and then say, how can I use, no, let's use the other table, sorry. So like this table, I want to use the P table from PrimeNG, which is a really nice component. And then how can I use PrimeNG P table for this HTML? So I'm using a local model. The local model will take a couple of seconds, give a response, and then I can change the model in the same conversation to a cloud model saying, hey, review what this local model suggested and tell me what's wrong with it. So I have like reviewers reviewing different models, and it's like, bloody hell. So here it's already doing a very good job. This is, by the way, from Meta, Facebook, an open source one. And so now I can go to Anthropic, use the best one currently out there, which is this one, and say, hey, review this suggested refactoring. And now it's taking what the local model gave me, send it to the cloud, and it's reviewing what this one locally does. So if you do that a couple of times with different models, the end result is pure poetry. Code that you probably would take a bit longer to develop, right? There it is. Let me review the suggested refactoring and provide a more complete PrimeNG. So, and actually, I tried this yesterday. When I copied the local one, it still had some bugs. When I then copied the preview one, no bugs, just worked. Voila, done. Cool, isn't it? I mean, come on. let's be honest, I call this the quantum superposition state that you are now feeling. It's both exciting and terrifying at the same moment. It is. It is exciting, but also terrifying. So there is this new wave going on. And there is a new wave. And this new wave is basically the Java ecosystem. So my goal, because I'm using Ollama is in Go and Rust, I always miss, because I'm a bit dyslexic. But there is an opportunity to have a full Java stack. I want to have a full implementation. Not only the plugin, which is using LangChain4j in Java, but also the inference engine. The way you talk to a model, the model itself has a universal format. So that's just some weights. But how to talk to the model currently is often in Python or in Go and Rust. I want to have it fully in Java. And it's actually possible. There are actually initiatives and 2 projects in specific, which is called JLlama and Llama 3.java. These are 2 projects which were actually presented last month at Devox, which is trying to go in that direction. And it's basically using some very interesting initiative. One is FFM, which is the foreign function memory, which is basically replacing J and I, right, to go to C++. But also the vector API, which is very important for matrix multiplications moving forward, but it's using SMID, which is basically shared memory. But the one I'm working or looking forward to is GPU support. We need to have GPU support in Java to do matrix multiplications locally on your machine. And that's where Babylon comes in play. But Babylon is still a couple of years away. And so there is a good alternative, which is called Tornado VM. Tornado VM has actually a GPU support implementation fully in Java. So my goal for the next month, because now Devox Belgium is over, I have 4 months of doing R&D, I want to actually do that type of stuff. But let's look at those 2 projects. Make sure you take a picture of this one. This is Jake Luciani. He developed JLlama. I started doing this myself. I was developing my own vector database until I saw his code. When I saw his code, I went like, okay, I'm just an average developer. Seriously, he's on a different planet. He's an expert developer, really. Hats off to him. It's an open source project. Just go to GitHub. And what he's built is basically a first way to do full Java inference using a local model. So I won't bore you to death, but basically there, generate, the last line, will actually call his API to do inference fully in Java. Yeah. Really beautiful code. You should have a look at it. And it's very easy to do. He actually uses JBang. So with JBang, you can easily install it. And then once you have the application installed, you can just run JLlama using the REST API and then selecting the model that you have locally on your machine. So, and the auto download is that if you don't have the model yet on your local machine, it will actually download it for you and install it on the directory that you specify. Let me demonstrate that for you. Here it is. So I've got JLlama. I can start it as I showed you. You do need to watch out. You need to use the right JVM. So if you're on Apple, you need to make sure that you're using an ARM64 Java version. Now, what I've run into is that if you use SDKman, SDKman still actually uses the x86 version, not the ARM version. You need the ARM version. So I actually have to disable SDKman and actually set the Java home specifically to use a specific, I use the Azul version of Java 23 on ARM. And then here in Devox Genie, I actually have JLlama as an experimental version. And so I can say, like, tell me a joke. And it will now talk to the local model, as you can see underneath, and actually generate, if all goes well, it will generate me a joke. There it is. Tell a joke. What did the programmer quit his job? Because he couldn't debug his emotions. But this, stupid joke, but what's more important, this was fully local, fully Java. There was no Python that has been used, fully in Java. So what does this allow you to do? You can actually have debug the server side and actually go through the inference, if you're interested in, and look at how the intention algorithm is implemented and see how matrix multiplications are done. And actually, like little boys, open the box and see, look inside what's going on. You can now do that fully in Java. Looks like I'm the only one excited. I don't know. That's cool. I mean, I find that interesting. The other talk, which was also given last month, which was by Alfonso and Alina. Alina is speaking here as well. She's from the GraalVM team, and Alfonso as well. But what Alfonso did as his hobby project is that he actually developed a Java version in one file called llama3.java. So it's one Java file, and it does Java inference using a local model. And it's fully in Java. The cool thing about it is that he works for the GraalVM team. So he really knows how to turn Java bytecode into native code and have it really run very fast. They were able to run it so fast that it was faster than the C++ implementation, which all these local models are using, which is llama.cpp. It was faster than llama CPP because they basically create a native image, which is like, wow. And they're not yet even using GPU. So they're just, they're using bleeding edge. They were able to do it natively on Windows and Linux only. On Mac, it did not yet work. It's like, damn, because I'm a Mac user. And what they actually saw is that the bigger the model size, actually the faster the inference was actually able to actually catch up with llama CPP. And at Devox Belgium, they were actually faster, which is like, wow, mind-boggling. After that talk, I wanted to use that with Devox Genie. So when I was flying from Brussels to Thessaloniki for Vox Days Thessaloniki, I built a Spring Boot wrapper around llama 3.java. So I now have a REST interface to llama 3.java using Spring Boot. And I've basically open sourced that. Because my aim is really to have the fastest inference implementation in Java, but then using GPU support and, of course, using GraalVM. That's really what I would like to do as an intellectual challenge. Let me demonstrate that. Right, it's not really too sexy, but basically here, so the Llama server, I can start that locally. I need to enable the preview models, etc. So now I've got that one running locally. So this is Llama 3 Java with a Spring Boot wrapper. And then I can do, again, tell a joke, to keep it fast and simple. And it's basically talking to the local Llama 3 model. And there it is. Now, again, the beauty is that I can now, because it's fully Java, debug and understand and how to fine-tune and make it better, etc. Because there are actually quite a few, I would say, low-hanging fruits and opportunities for LLMs using Java. One is, I would like to have, like Meta, Facebook, has released Llama 3.2, and they have different versions in parameters. So you have like a 9 billion version, or 7 and 9, but the biggest one is 405 billion parameters, which is equivalent to ChatGPT. But to have 405 billion parameters run locally on your machine, you need a gazillion RAM. Right? Won't happen. Now, what is happening to actually find a solution is they're starting to introduce a concept called sharding. Everybody knows database sharding. Well, they're doing sharding on large language models. So they're basically splitting the model in different layers. So a model has layers, and they say, like, okay, these 6 layers go to this machine, the next 10 layers go to that machine, and so on. And when you then do an inference, it will go through the different machines. And as a result, I can actually have a 405 billion parameter model running locally with 3 MacBooks. If you still have some MacBooks around, or at the office, you can share it with your colleagues. The other one is, as I've already mentioned, is GPU support. So we've not even touched that. I am in contact with the Tornado VM guys, and I will hopefully work with them to make that happen. There's this very interesting article here from Tornado VM, but this was specific for Llama 2, not Llama 3.2. But here in this blog post, they explain how they use Tornado VM to do GPU enablement of a Java inference engine. The other opportunity is prompt and token caching, so you can actually cache your tokens if you're doing similar requests. That's not yet been implemented, so there's some opportunities there as well. And then non-Llama opportunities are, I don't know if you've heard about it, but something called, Microsoft just released that last month, called bitnets. So instead of using a long float for your weights, they're using just a bit. Well, it's more than a bit, it's 1.5 bits, because they're using -1, 0, and 1. And that's it. So instead of using a 16 or 32-bit float to represent your weights, which has the semantic meaning of a certain word, they will actually reduce it to the smallest possible representation. And it seems that if you're using this for very large language models, it actually comes with knowledgeable answers. So that's an interesting one. The problem is that bitnets is a completely different approach. So you can't just switch the model using JLlama or Llama 3.java and say, now use a bitnet. No, it has a different mechanic to do inference. There's another one which is doing layer skipping, where it basically will skip layers from your model, and it will still come up with, because that way it's faster, and it will still come up with knowledgeable answers. And then the other one is ternary matrix multiplications, which I'll talk later on in the next slides. But what about my problem case? I want to have native Java inference, or native, meaning GraalVM, on my Apple machine, on my Mac machine. It seems, I've spoken with Alina about that, we just need to update how native images are seen by GraalVM. So GraalVM is not yet ready to do that on Apple. They are doing this on Windows and Linux. And also, if I want to have my Spring Boot REST interface compiled to native, I've spoken also with some people who are really into this one. They're currently working on supporting ahead of time compilation and ASM, so it's still pending. So this is bleeding edge, right? There's still, and I'm doing these talks to actually push them a bit, because we need to have this native Java implementation, because that way Java will become the first-class citizens for LLM inference, and I think that's an important thing if you love Java. So talking about LM sharding, there was this talk, again last month, by Mohammed. They've got a project called EXO. The problem is it's in Python, but what is really interesting is that they focus completely on Apple Silicon. And they're using an API from Apple called MLX. And MLX is a C++ library which they use to actually do sharding. And so what you can do, what you can see here, right, is actually a picture from my home, where I have my 3 machines. I have a Mac Mini, a Mac Studio, which I do my development on, and my MacBook Pro, which is this one here. And you install this EXO on those 3 machines. They auto-discover each other via, I think it's probably UDP. Then you select a model. It downloads the model using BitTorrent. So it downloads a model, and it then copies it to the different machines that you're doing inference on. And then I can start talking to it with Devoxx Genie. It's just an OpenAI API. So in Devoxx Genie, you select EXO, and then you can do inference of a 405 billion large language model on your 3 machines or 4 machines or whatever you have. The cool thing is, last week Apple announced MacBook M4. So Christmas is around the corner. You know. But have a look at that. What I would love to do is that maybe do a port of MLX using FM, and then have that as a way, as a temporary solution. There's some nice opportunities there. However, if you don't want to do that, Jake actually has you covered. He actually already developed sharding using JLlama. And he does it on different levels. He does it on the attention head and on the layers, or both. So that's basically the only sharding strategies you have. He implemented it, all of them. And it's like, wow. He's really, in my opinion, he's a genius. I mean, seriously. And the code is so beautiful. Wow. I mean, and that's his hobby project, right? So it's like, yeah, hats off. And it's very straightforward to do. if you type in JLlama, you can actually, he does work with a coordinator and workers. So you have like this one coordinator and then talks to the different workers. I prefer more that it does like UDP, where you just, everybody is a worker, and it does this coordination using a bit more distributed approach. But hey, this does work. Anyway, I won't bore you to death with all the details, but the other one, the biggest bottleneck, as it's already obvious, is the GPU matrix multiplication. So that's where 98% of the time of inference is done on matrix multiplications. And if you're a gamer, the way to do that is to get GPU support. And so there's a few approaches. I've already talked about that: Babylon, Triton CUDA, and Tornado VM. And yeah, that's where the entrance, or that's where the excitement is. But there's actually a technical paper which actually excludes matrix multiplications, and it's using a way to actually use ternary expressions, where it's actually replacing matrix multiplications with ternary expressions, making it faster. But the problem is you need to change the full engine of your inference again. So this is still very experimental. It's on GitHub, but it's an interesting approach. But I'm not going to develop my own inference engine. So if Alfonso is not doing this, that won't happen for me, unfortunately. But I'm like feeding him, like, hey, Alfonso, did you look at this one? Maybe, I'm hinting him like what he could do on a rainy weekend in Zurich. So I think that's where, from a Java perspective, that's where the excitement is. JLlama, Llama 3 Java are definitely the interesting projects. And I talk about this, and I was at Vox Days Thessaloniki doing this talk actually for the first time. And again, the product manager from Quarkus was there. He said, like, oh man, you've again inspired me, because I just said to the engineers, stop all work. You now need to support Llama 3 in Quarkus. And the next day, Georgios, also a great developer, he already actually did one port. And so Quarkus, anybody using Quarkus here? I would say 5%. Who's using Spring Boot? Yeah, that's to be expected, 80%. But Quarkus now also has already support for Llama 3. The only problem is that if they then create a native app, it's only for Windows and Linux because of the reasons I just gave you. So we need to wait for Apple. So I would say it's exciting times. Seriously, make sure you jump on this wagon, play with it. If your company doesn't allow it, play with it locally, install Devoxx Genie, play with it, contribute. I mean, Hunter is here also as a contributor. He definitely already helped. It's an open source project. The idea to open sources is to, help and as a community move forward. And I've still got 6 minutes for questions. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah?
I have a question about your plugin. It looks interesting, something I want to try out. But to me, what looks daunting is the entire list of models to choose from and the data sets. So how, as a beginner, can I know where to start with that?
Yeah, so the question is, which model should I choose in Devoxx Genie? Because there's a lot of options there. So first of all, are you on Mac or on Windows or Mac? So Ollama, first install Ollama. It's free, it runs, nice. And with Ollama, you can then download models. I would start with Llama 3.2b. Let me just go to here. So if I go here and say Ollama, these are the ones I've already installed, but the one I'm using is this one here. So Llama 3.2, 3 billion. Start with that. Right? That's already a very good one. It's very compact, it's very fast. But then I would definitely recommend use Anthropic as the evaluator, because Sonnet 3.5, that's the best model out there. ChatGPT, forget it. Seriously, ChatGPT is not as good for the moment, because they're constantly, jumping ahead of each other. Today, Sonnet 3.5. So it will give you goosebumps. It will give you a midlife crisis, unfortunately, but you're going to be productive. Yeah? Those two, perfect. And this will cost you $20 a month, because you need cloud, and then you have the local one. That's it. Do it this evening, now. Any other questions? Yeah?
When you mentioned the word
Yeah. So when I said Anthropic, you didn't know what I meant about it. So Anthropic is the company, like you have OpenAI is the company, and then the models that Anthropic has is Claude, Sonnet. But Claude, so Anthropic has 3 versions of their model. They have Opus, which is the best one, but they've stopped that one because Sonnet is actually better than the Opus previous version one. And then the cheaper one is Haiku. So those are the 3. So, but Sonnet 3.5 is the one you need to use. And with OpenAI, you have ChatGPT, ChatGPT 4.0, 4 Turbo, O1. So there's different models there as well. Don't use them. That's actually, by the way, that's what Copilot is using, but it's not as good as Sonnet. Right? So that's the context. You're welcome. Yeah, there, over there.
I got a follow-up question about the models.
Yeah.
Say that you're using Claude to review your local models response.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the inhibition from your company that you might be working for that doesn't want you to share your data with a large model come into play in that interaction?
So once you go to Anthropic, you're lost. So once you go to a cloud provider, and if it's not on-premise, you've given away the secrets.
Even the local models generation?
No, the local models is local. That's local, privacy, no problem.
Yeah, but you're asking Claude to review.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I start first, because it's an open source project, it's already indexed, right? So I don't care. So if I start with a local one because I'm on the train, I have crappy internet. And then when I go and have better internet, I will use those answers to go to Claude in the cloud. It's indexed. You just need to assume once you use a cloud provider, there's no more secrets. However, for bigger companies like banks and so on, they will often install ChatGPT. I don't think Claude does that. That I don't know, because that's out of my league. But you can have an on-premise installation, and then it's really contained. But once it's cloud, forget about, I mean, seriously, be careful.
Yeah.
Other questions over there?
I have tried to install the plugin on IntelliJ 2023, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you need to upgrade.
Yeah, is there a reason for that, or could I just change it and...
I accept pull requests.
Okay, I haven't tried it.
I mean, I use the latest and greatest, and it's like, yeah, you need to set in the Gradle config, you need to set like the limited. It might be possible to downgrade it to a lower one, but then it might break certain things. You need to look into it. That's why it's open source.
Okay, I haven't tried.
Sorry.
No problem.
Any other questions? Yeah, there.
Yes, so as a younger developer myself, would you say that I should be interested in researching this kind of stuff?
Seriously. Yeah, of course. There's no option. You have to. No, seriously, you're young. You still have 40 years to go. You know, I'm giving you a compliment here. But seriously, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. I mean, that's why I call it augmented AI programming. It is really, we are being augmented. And the genie is out of the bottle. That's why it's called DevOps Genie. You're not getting the genie back in the bottle. Even if people say, wow, but AI, it's hype. Even if they've plateaued from an intellectual point of view, the models, even if they plateaued it, it's already giving me added value already today. So even if it doesn't evolve anymore, it's already giving me productivity gains. But they have not yet plateaued yet. It's only getting better, seriously. You have to use it. There's no other option. Or you will be replaced by a developer who does. Yeah, that's really my opinion. And hey, sure, I may be not that empathetic, but this is reality, guys. Take it or leave it. Any other questions? I do accept donations as well, but more in the sense of pull requests. So please have a look at the project. It's the first time I developed a plugin, so it's not the best code. So if you see opportunities to make it better, use it. Donate some time back and make it better. If you have some features, try to develop it yourself. Downgrade it to lower versions of IntelliJ. It's a community effort. Join. More questions? Yeah, so Olama works also on Windows. Yeah. That's okay, no problem. I think my time is up. Thank you for your attention. I'm still here all day. If you want to have a personal chat, don't hesitate. Thank you.